Good evening, afternoon, or morning, depending on when you're listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Documentation Not Included. It's Thursday, 7 p.m. BST. We are live on twitch.tv/DNI stream. And it's time for the next show in our freelancing series, episode 11.7, The Art of Networking. I am Josey Howarth, and as always, I am joined by the white truffle to my beef jerky, Chris Seabach.
I like that one. That's a good one. Yes,
You actually understood that one.
I did, yeah. I'm useless most of the time. Considering the amount of sleep I had last night as well, I'm amazed that I'm understanding anything right now. So sorry if I slur my words today. So yes, hello Josie, and hello to everybody in chat. There is quite a lot of things going on in chat today. And there's a fair few people there. So hello to everyone. Please do get involved with the show. Ask any questions. Make any comments. Anything relevant, funny, or otherwise, we may very well read it out. We may very well engage, so do get involved. Before we get going, let me introduce this week's guest, Sarah Phipps. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Should have confirmed that. That's how professional I am. I should have confirmed how to say your name.
I even introduced last name.
So, yes. Hello, Sarah. Can you please, for the benefit of our guests, introduce yourself, tell them why you're here and what you do?
My name is Sarah. Like Chris said, I am a freelance graphic designer. I have my own company, and I like to work in my PJs as much as possible.
That's a very good introduction. I don't work in my PJs, but I get them on as soon as I can. About 2 o'clock in the afternoon is usually the average time. To 4 o'clock maybe a push.
Yeah.
Well, as they say, one of the nicest things about being a consultant freelancer thing that works from home is you do get to pick your wardrobe. And sometimes that can be PJs. But before we get started, as always, we're about to do our icebreaker question. And this is just a question we ask before the show, gives you a chance to get to know us, get to know our guest, and hopefully wake Chris's brain up because he does look a little bit tired today. Oh, as I knock things over on my desk. So here's my question for you. You have now become the ruler of a country. What do you name your country?
Seabuck Town.
Seabuck Town. Seabuck Townville.
Oh, guest's honor again. I'm gonna have to think actually.
What would you name your country? And I asked this to you guys in chat as well. Please let us know. I'd love to know what you would name your country if you were in charge of country. What would you name it?
Epic Acres.
Epic Acres. Interesting.
I've never thought of this. I've never ever thought, and I'm about as creative as an antelope today. I'm not, honestly, I haven't got anything.
I wonder if it's a woman thing. I know Sarah and I have discussed many times owning our own country, so.
Oh no, I thought it was an island, not a whole country.
But it can be a country. Your island can be a country, darling.
Sulako in chat says Loveland.
She's very close to what I would call my lands. Yes, I will call my lands the aspects of love.
The thing is, right, I can't come up with a name. I'm useless at naming things. I'm useless at the creative aspects, but I've already sorted out all of the rules, all of the laws, all of the things that people can and can't do. That's all already sorted. I don't know.
Seabuck
Townville, yeah.
See, for the best name, I would need to know a lot more about like the geographic location, the weather, the kind of population, agriculture. Therefore, I can name it most appropriately, which is kind of how I also make logos. Like, what's your target demographic? What is your industry? Okay, here are colors that work. Here are words that work. That's how I'd have to name my country. I need to know what's the topical location of the highest mountain peak, and what are the color of the sheep.
That's quite an American thing, though,
plaid.
Isn't it?
Obviously plaid.
Because a lot of places in America are named after the places they are, or what they're next to, or what they're near. I mean,
or they're named after dead people that we now regret naming after.
Yeah,
or they are named after things that don't make sense. Don't forget Intercourse, Pennsylvania.
Oh, been there. I've got a sticker downstairs.
Hell, Michigan.
Yeah.
Hell, Michigan.
It freezes over every year, so...
Oh,
El Gordino says Simtropolis.
Volstratz is brilliant, and I wish I'd have thought of it. Misanthropia.
Population me. Ooh, I like that.
Love it. Yeah, I'm not even going to try and answer it. So anyway, I like
the idea of Seabuck Townville, Townville.
Seabuckchester.
So that'd be the capital, not necessarily the name of the country.
No, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Useless anyway. Right, I'll say yes. On to today's show and today's topic, which is the art of networking, aptly named because Sarah networks and Sarah is an artist. What do you prefer, artist or graphic artist or?
I like any title that makes me sound fancy. I had a business card that had literally 16 titles. Like my name was this big and I had all these titles because like, oh, I do this, I do that. Like eventually it just like, this is a little excessive.
Do you want to know what Sarah's title is? Supreme Leader. It's in her emails.
Mm-hmm.
She is Supreme Leader.
See, I run my own country, apparently.
Apparently so.
So yes, today's subject is the art of networking, and this is not the art of networking as in computers, LANs, WANs, all the geeky stuff that we normally talk about. This is actually what we do when we go out and speak to people, when we go out and engage with human beings. Almost what we're doing right now, in fact. This is a form of networking when you look at
it is
what we're doing here. We're speaking to people in chat, we're building a community, we have guests on. All of this is kind of networking. We will, and in fact, let's explore that immediately. Josey.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I'm going off script here. I'm going mad. I'm going
rogue. He's gone rogue, folks.
It just occurred to me.
He's got his own country, and now all of a sudden he's on like he thinks he's in power.
It just occurred to me that the only reason Sarah is on here right now is because of networking. Yes. Because she is within your network.
She is. And in fact, absolutely every single guest that we have had on the show has been connected to one of us one way or another. Even if that connection was a reach out going, hey, your website is crazy and we're doing a development podcast. Can we have you on to talk about something? Because this is really cool.
Well, so that was actually that one example in particular was achieved via social networking, which is a different type of networking. But let's start with the initial question that I wanted to ask Sarah to start off with, which is tell us why we should network as freelancers.
Well, mainly because if you work from home, you're not in an office environment that you're surrounded by all these other people. You don't have your colleagues right next to you. Like you can't go over someone's cubicle wall and ask them a question or get their insight about something. You have to go and outreach to meet people. When I started freelancing full-time about 5 years ago, it was very lonely because I came from a full office environment where there was like maybe 30 other people in just my department. I was never alone. And then I go from that to I am completely by myself. Like, yeah, this is great. I have all this freedom. And then it's so quiet. You start hearing the little crickets in the background. Like, oh, there's no one here to give me feedback. There's no one here to talk shop with. Like, what can I do about that? So I started looking into networking groups, just even like-minded creatives. Like, hey, here's a chance to get out, see what other people are working on. If they need my services or I could tap into their services. And because really working by yourself, it is a bubble, it is a vacuum, and it could be very detrimental to your work in the long run because like, oh yeah, this looks great. You throw it out there in the real world and you don't get the response you were expecting because you didn't get that feedback. So going out and meeting people, even just in like a casual atmosphere, there's a bunch of places where it's just come join us for happy hour and just talk shop. Let's complain and bitch about our clients just for like, 20 minutes and a beer, stuff like that. It's so much more refreshing. I'm a very social person, so I absolutely had to gravitate to that because otherwise I was going to go insane.
It's interesting. It's interesting you'd say that. I think it depends on who I ask that question. There are people that I would ask that question and they would say, to get clients, obviously.
Well, okay, here's where I'm going to jump in on this. I have a networking group for a couple of different things that I do that are in scope of what I run my company for and completely out of scope for what I run my company for. And each one of them has a purpose. One I go to learn from. So one of the networking groups that I am a part of is all about helping everyone learn and understand concepts that they may not understand on a particular topic. In my case, it's WordPress, because I do a lot of my clients' works with WordPress. I've also looked at joining things like Drupal groups that are local in the area and other code-based groups as well. I've also looked at starting a few because I want to encourage people to get involved in the world of anything involving tech. So there's things like tech mums and things like that that I'm also fascinated by. But then there's the other side where it's like getting out there and actually meeting people is kind of cool, because you just have people that have a interest. You find your networking groups based on a interest. You don't just show up somewhere and go, I want to network. This is the networking group of, in my case, writers. So the group gets together, they put their head down at the coffee shop. Like when this group walks in together, they all pick this one back part of a particular cafe that does coffee. Everyone sits down, laptops come out. All the acknowledgement you get in that networking group is this brief nod, and everyone's headphones are on and they're all writing. Then a timer basically kind of goes off at a certain time. Everybody packs up. Then they acknowledge the presence of everyone and go, hey, how are you doing? How's your book doing? Oh, did you get that script to that guy that you wanted to get him to? Did you get the feedback that you were looking for? Cool, let's go grab a beer real quick. And then everyone separates. It's dependent. I think networking can help you get clients. But if that's the only purpose of you doing it, I think you're missing out big time on all of the other things you can get from the experience. And if it's because I'm in a different place than a lot of people.
I said that to be devil's advocate.
I know.
I don't network. In fact, I don't network at the moment at all. But when I did network, I didn't network for the business, but I networked at a business networking meeting, which is distinctly different from what both of you just mentioned. You've mentioned like-minded groups where you go along to bounce off other people and to stifle the loneliness. You know, to stop you going crazy. And
I don't want to hear the voices in my head.
Which
I want to hear other people's voices.
I did do that when I was in the gaming community and I was writing a computer game. I went to gaming networking events specifically.
Oh, I discovered you.
Was it?
I discovered you because I was running a gaming-centric kind of podcast.
No, right, you are. And at that moment in my life, I was doing a lot of physical networking as well. It's different when you go to a business networking meeting, so breakfast clubs. I used to go to a local one. It was solicitors from the local area, builders, tradesmen, accountants. There was a web designer there, you know, that kind of thing. Basically, lots of different businesses, and you can only have one person from each business sector. So there could not be another software consultant there when I went. I had that market sector essentially, and that is how what business networking groups generally work, like the BNI. BNI is a big one in the UK. It charges you thousands of pounds to join.
We have the same thing here too.
Yeah, the only people who win in that situation really are the people who are running the networking event. Unless
pyramid scam, damn it. Pyramid scam.
To an extent, yes, but there is also what you put in, you get out. I noticed that when I went to the networking, people couldn't care less about what I do. They have no interest whatsoever. I try and sell myself. I'm awful at it anyway. I got better at speaking in front of people while I was there, and I also got business mentorship. That was what I got from it, and I learned how to be more of a businessman, and how to speak to people in less technical terms, and how to not and R and, you know, fill all the spaces in that I used to fill in. But
right out the window, I guess.
Right out the window, yeah. I've not been for a while, and I'm tired. That's the fourth time I've mentioned that today. So the point is that there's so many different types. There's online networking. There's networking in events. There's business networking where people... I mean, there were so many people at that business group that just went for business. I mean, especially a lot of the tradespeople. They were there and they got so many referrals. They got so many slips handed to them. Oh, my neighbour needs a new roof doing, or I've got an electrical problem that needs sorting out. Loads of... Brilliant for tradespeople. But for people like me who specialise, who is trying to sell a fairly specialised service to small businesses that probably... don't have the budget for huge software projects that I would initiate, start, hire people for, you know. It's not suitable for me. I'm going to shut up in a second. My preference now is these groups that you talk about, these like-minded people. I've actually signed up for a few emails with, you know, like Code Up and various other places, just to kind of get a feel of what is around here. There isn't much around where I am, unfortunately, but I do want to get into that again at some point.
You know, it's interesting. We've had someone on the show. Actually, it was the individual that I reached out to about his website, and he was talking about how, in his case, he created something because there wasn't something there. So maybe, just maybe, that might be a thing for you to look at, especially if you have such limited um, resources or places to network out. I will state that for me, having been around like-minded individuals, there are some goods and some bads to that. One, some goods. I found someone that I was able to pull in as a contractor to help me finish a huge project that just got sort of thrown at us. And it was just like, and I needed the extra resources. And I found it through that networking. And I also have had people reach out to me and go, I know you're in the same league as I am. I know you're doing the same stuff I'm doing. I just need an extra 5 hours. Can you please just do this? It's boring as hell. It's data entry. It's basically, you know, moving stuff from one. No, sadly, it's like Word documents into an SQL database. And it's just like, yeah, I got this. I'll help. Not a problem. So there is a way to find the client stuff there, but something that I at least have discovered for me for with the networking side of things is when I'm around people who understand when I use a term that someone else kind of gets that glazed over look in their eyes and their jaw kind of slacks and they're like, you know, they're not paying attention. But when you're around people who understand what you're saying, there's a confidence level that comes from that, which makes reaching out to newer clients a lot easier because you have those people sitting there going, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And here's how I handled it. Or they turn to you and you go, that's interesting because the way I did it was this. And like, oh, well, this is what I did. And you know what? That worked. You were right. All of a sudden, there's this sort of steel that gets injected into your spine because it's not like you need to have someone patting you on the back. And like we've discussed before, paper warriors mean nothing. You know, having other people in your peer network who understand you, who turn around and go, yes, all of a sudden there's this sense of, okay, I can do this. I do understand what I'm talking about. And that can be really, really, really powerful. And it can be very inspirational.
I can relate directly to that, not in a networking sense, but at the moment I'm battling against. I have an uphill battle against people. I'm the only person who does commercial software development with my current client. I'm trying to get people on board with the process, and it's very difficult to do that because nobody really fully. They're very clever and they know their domain of expertise very, very well, but they don't understand my domain whatsoever, and it's difficult. Today I had a meeting with some of those people and an external vendor, and one of the people that I was speaking to as an external vendor was a tech lead, somebody who understands what I do. And it was after weeks and weeks of banging my head against a wall, it was just nice in the context, in the nice little boxed off context of that particular part of my world. It was really nice to have that, yeah, that you're right. This is how you do it. You know, you're not going absolutely stir crazy. This is correct. You know.
Yes.
Not networking, but almost. In fact, something networking possibly might have came from the whole conversation. But beside from that,
I find networking with people in the same field very refreshing for the sake that we like to share our little insights and our secrets. Like, one person who's new to the industry, because we had a roundtable a couple weeks ago, and like, oh, I just started freelancing. What tips can you give me just starting out? Because I quit my full-time job. I'm diving headfirst into this. Like, well, first of all, you need to have your 6 months, parachute ready. They're like, what are you talking about? Like, you need to have 6 months of expenses saved up so you can still pay your bills, even if you don't have work. And she's like, oh, I didn't do that. Or another one asked, like, oh, how do you follow up with clients? It's like, well, if I know I need to email somebody the next day, I will draft the email the night before, connect all files and documents, and I'm like, hey, I'm talking about this, I'm talking about that. And then when I wake up in the morning, all I have to do is hit send, and I have like 12 drafted emails ready to go the next morning. So I don't have to wake up early and type everything. So as soon as it's 9 o'clock, that's when I'm officially on the clock. I will send all of those emails. Like, okay, I can check that off my list because I did it the day before. Just staying on top, just little insights like that we share with each other, because some people do it differently. And when they ask, like, oh, how do you do it? Like, well, I do it this way. Same thing, like if we're using Adobe Illustrator and I open up my document and people are like, what's all this stuff on the side? Like, this is my process. I keep copies of copies of copies in case, like, oh, this was really working out 3 steps ago, but I already saved my document. And if you don't save your iterations, like, oh, I regret because it looked really good that way, I want to go back to it. And it's just sharing those little tidbits and insider secrets. Because I did start off with the business networking, where it was a BNI group, and people were trying to get me to join because they had no graphic designers, but everybody was trying to sell themselves so hard. All they wanted were clients. They didn't want to network in the way of making good, solid connections. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to refer you to these people that need X, Y, and Z. That's what you provide. Anytime I would tell somebody, oh, I'm a graphic designer, they would think like, oh, you do printing and stuff like that. Like, I can make stuff that you can't print. So it's a very specialized field for what I do. And I had to educate them. And that's always with clients. It's always with people that are not in the industry. It's all about education. It's all about layman terms, not making them feel stupid, because it's like, oh, I've said this 100 times to 20 other people in just this meeting alone. But it's like, no, they genuinely don't know. And if you give them good information, then they appreciate that. And then if they meet another person in your industry or your field, like, oh, I understand. I talked to another, person who does the exact same thing that you did, and they don't feel quite so alienated from the process. Even if they don't understand, like, I don't know what you do, but okay, go ahead and do it. I trust you. If you sound like you know what you're talking about, then it starts to get to them like, oh yeah, it's okay that I'm good at what I do. You're good at what you do. We don't have to cross the paths on that. And networking is a good way to introduce people to what you do if they've never met, a programmer, a developer, or a designer in person and actually had to interact with them. Because all the industries I've ever been in, the creative department is segregated. We're right next to the IT technical help desk, and we would cross paths every now and then the bosses from management or financing are like, we need this, this, and this, and we had to work together with each other, even though we didn't speak literally the same language sometimes. And it's just, you got to learn how to mesh with people. And eventually I got tired of that, and that's why I started trying to find more other creatives, because like, hey, I want to talk shop with people. How do you find clients? Because we're in the same industry. What are your tips and tricks? Because somebody who's a roofer goes after their customers and clients completely differently than graphic designers and what we do.
There is something also to be said when you are around people who are not in any way, shape, or form in your industry, like the business side of networking, more so than the peer side of networking. You learn about industries in a way that allows you to better serve clients that you get in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Because you learn about, some of the shop talk that, say, a roofer would use or a lawyer would use versus, say, something that a charity would use. You learn terms just like they would learn from you. They're basically arming you for the job battle, for the war that you're fighting, this proactive, long drawn out, do we have food on the table or not kind of thing. Because when you're freelancing, contracting, or you're running your own company, you need customers, period.
Mm-hmm.
I found by the end of my networking experiences, or my business networking experiences, I'm not sure I'll do it again, to be fair, the business side. I think I'll probably end up pursuing the peer networking. I didn't necessarily find it frustrating that I couldn't explain myself to people, because that was almost a given. I was in the geek corner. I was with the IT guy who run an IT company, the web developer, software consultant myself, and then also a PR guy for some reason was lumped in with us because he was a bit geeky and he wore glasses. Yes, it was that kind of thing. And they were just like, basically,
Wow.
the corner was poo-pooed as the if we've got anything technical, we'll ask them. I had one guy bring a hard drive to me and say, I've lost my photos, can you sort it out? And that's so nothing like what I do. It was almost a little bit insulting, but I did the work for him anyway and charged him my normal rate for it, probably more than he would have done, but beside the point. I have a problem in that, for me, it's a respect thing. I go there, and part of my job is to understand other people's jobs, to assimilate information and create software that helps them do their job better. That is essentially what I do. I am a people person without really wanting to be a people person. I have to understand them, and I have to thoroughly understand their business and their business logic and their business processes and everything to really help them. I am automatically figuring out how everybody works in a not personally their business when I'm at a business networking, but nobody seems to care or want to care. Or want to put the effort into understanding what I do. I say nobody. There's a few people, the more of the techie group, that the PR guy in particular, for some reason, was very analytical and wanted to learn a lot about me, and we had lots of one-to-ones and conversations about things. But it frustrates me a little bit, that glassy-eyed kind of ignorance and disrespect. I look at it as.
See, this is not necessarily a problem in networking. This is just a problem in human nature in general. Is you're going to get people who have their own agendas, and that agenda doesn't include other people unless it gets them something. Or, if you're not going to be a potential client, why should I listen to anything you have to say? If you're not going to help me, get my lawn done, why should I talk to you? If you're not going to be the person who I'm going to be playing tennis with, why should I talk to you? There are people like that.
Because human nature.
It is very human nature. I mean, there's an individual in the group that I'm in the WordPress community that when I'm around them, I feel really bad. Like they rub me the wrong way. And it comes from a comment that was made during a session. Everyone was, doing a sort of a lesson about theming and how to, use the hooks and how to use the loop and how you would theme your own side of WordPress and things like that. And the person, was so adamant about removing any form or sign of WordPress anywhere and never giving the clients access to their own websites. And like, it almost seemed immoral to me, because I'm the kind of individual who wants to teach, who wants to educate. I want to empower my clients, because if something happens to me or they turn around one day and go, I've loved working with you, but I'm going to go somewhere else, I want them to feel empowered to make an educated decision. And it felt to me like they were taking that responsibility away. But that is just how they ran things. That is how they felt they needed to do things in order to secure their clients, their reputation, their work. And you know what? So be it. That's their thing. But it isn't mine. But it does make it uncomfortable for me at times. Does that stop me? No, I just acknowledge and accept the fact that we work completely different. It takes all sorts to make this world work. It really does. And thus, in networking, whether you're in peer or business, you're going to run across those people who are literally going to be going, yep, yeah, so that's what you do. I'm glad. Yeah, I'm so glad. Yeah, And then you're going to run across the people who go, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I want to.
Try and make me understand. To be fair, I see that as a challenge for myself. I like to be able to...
I love educating the uneducated.
It's not... I absolutely thrive on the certain people I'm working with at the moment that listen to what I'm saying and they accept change is going to happen and they want to make change happen, or they can at least see a light at the end of a tunnel, and they can see that what I'm trying to do is going to be helpful for them and the business. I also love to teach, and I come across so many people that don't. They keep the cards close to the chest. They keep that proprietary information to themselves, and I don't know if it's an insecurity or I don't know if it's just the inability to communicate very
It
well.
could be the culture as well.
It could be a culture. It is definitely a culture in some instances, in fact. But I'm not like that, and I never will be. I have been, I think, when I was younger, but these days it's more about, as you said, empowering people, giving people the information, and hoping that. And it's burned me a few times. I've given them the information, and they've went and hired someone cheaper, or they've went off and used that information in a way that didn't include me, and I've lost out. But that's the risk you run, and I think I do better for giving people information, especially morally, in my own head. I feel better about being a giving person.
For example, there is a client that both Sarah and I work with together, and they needed help to do something because they didn't know how to make something work. And I put time aside in my schedule to ensure that I could educate them. In the entire time that I was walking them through this, I said, I could write you a tutorial and send it to you. I could, share my screen and show you how to do things, or I can have you do it. And I have found it's best to make you do it. So I stayed with them the entire time, and they kept saying, like, every 10 to 15 minutes, you're so patient. You're so patient. I feel like, I'm like, don't worry. I'm here until you understand. I'm here until you get this, because what good is this information if you can't replicate it, if you can't duplicate it? And they were like, yeah, I understand, but you're so patient. I'm like, I'm like, it's shocking to me how strange she thought that was.
It's a culture. That is a cultural thing, though, and I've seen that very recently as well. People saying thank you for your time, and are you sure you've got time? Even though I've repeatedly said I will give you all of the time that you need. I will train you. I will help you. I will give you the information.
It's built into the contract for me to train you. Come on.
Sometimes it is, but that's again just my nature. I want to offload information to people. I love doing that. I love it when they go away and they have that moment of, oh, this is going to make my life better. This is going to make my job easier. This is, whatever I'm doing, I like that. That's my it's non-monetary, but it's my payment. It's the way that I get off on it a little bit, I suppose.
You know what it fills for me, if we want to look at it sort of like gaming, it doesn't fill the social. What it fills for me is a feeling of accomplishment. Because if I walk away and someone is one button closer to understanding how to publish something on a website, I feel good. But rolling back to the networking side of things, we had a question come in from Tultepe, and I think this is a fantastic question, and thus I'm going to ask it. So how important would you say networking is from an employee perspective? In my company, it's pretty much looked at as a waste of time. Now, I'm going to jump in on this real quick first. Here in the United Kingdom, a lot of companies like to put aside time for team building exercises. Sometimes they're really, really horrible, and it is one of those things where you just laugh at the stupidity of a big conglomerate trying to get 60 people at a location, all doing the exact same thing, and it's trust building exercises and all the good stuff that goes with it.
To spend the tax money at the end of the year, you mean?
Yes, exactly.
It's in the budget. We got to spend it before the end of the fiscal year, quick.
Exactly. That's usually when it happens. However, I have witnessed both being part of that and seeing what happens from the outside. When you have a company and there are different departments, like Sarah, sorry, I call her Sazzle. So of course I'm saying that. Like Sarah said, when she was working in the company, she had the arts department in one section. They were close to the IT department. Never the twain shall they meet, but they shall try to speak using semaphores or whatever other language they could figure out to make certain they could get their jobs done. Now, in the work setting, you're stuck like that. If you can, pick up your two departments, move them outside of work environment, put them somewhere else. All of a sudden, people start talking about things that don't have anything to do with work, and people stop seeing they're the IT department. That's Bob. Bob likes to go horseback riding and is a damn good GM for his D&D team. You know, or that is Julia and she hates Game of Thrones, but she absolutely loves Jim Henson. They're no longer this autonomous entity. They're an individual, and it changes how you interact with them once you are put back into those halls. To me, networking among employees across different departments, even the same department, because just because you're sitting in the same department doesn't mean you have much time to interact with each other, is almost a requirement for a healthy environment and culture. Even if the group gets together and goes, oh my God, we're doing trust building exercises, that's the entire group getting together going, we're doing trust exercises. Hey, maybe I'll learn to juggle. I say that because my husband learned to juggle at one of these things. So.
I personally think from an employee perspective, networking, business networking is almost useless because that is to get, essentially to get business clients.
Yeah.
If you do some freelancing on the side, then yeah, maybe. But I think the other type of networking, the peer type of networking, the getting in with a group of people that enjoy doing the same thing as you do, whatever it is, it could be LAN parties, it could be coding, it could be something to do with work, it might not be, it might be something completely unrelated. But I think keeping it in the context of work, I think it is still important to do that because it teaches you. In fact, I would say it's even more important because as a contractor, I get the opportunity to work with lots of different cultures and lots of different developers and lots of different types of people all the time. Every company is different, and I get a very wide spread of knowledge and a very broad understanding of the world. Whereas if you're an employee and you work somewhere for 20 years, you've got 20 years experience of one thing, of doing one thing with that company and in one culture, and you don't understand how the rest of the world works. So again, bouncing off other people, getting information, this new framework that's in coding senses, this new framework's come out, or this new programming language is now all that, you know, the rage, and this is why it's cool, and these are the pros and cons of it. That conversation is very much worth having, in my eyes, and I would say that would be the same for almost anything.
What do you think, Sarah?
Just from my own experience, I've only worked in maybe 2 or 3 big companies where there was more than 50 employees. So getting a chance to meet everybody on the team or people out in a warehouse environment was kind of impossible, and it was never really encouraged. When I started working in the more creative industry, it was maybe 8 to 10 people at most. So you worked with everybody, your financiers, your project managers, your art director, your creative director. You worked with everybody one-on-one. Even the person at the front desk who was able to juggle all the phone calls and incoming and outgoing emails, you knew who everybody was. You knew their name, you knew their hobbies and their interests, and it was a much easier way to work because these are people you look at like, oh, they're not just co-workers, they're not just my boss. Like, here's a human being behind that name. When I worked in the last big company I worked in, we sold a lot of outdoor furniture, very luxury style items. And so, the creative department, IT department were slightly close to each other. We were in the e-commerce department. So anything that was going to be up on the website or email blasts or anything in a digital format, that's what we did. Even the print department, because we printed these, almost 500-page catalogs for all the products we would bring out. Every, quarter, we'd bring out a new catalog. We have the photographers in their own darkroom, and everybody was separate. We did have, over the year and a half I was working there, we did have big company-wide parties, and each department would get to pick a theme, and everybody in all the departments would bring food associated with that theme. The one that we got was a Mexican theme. And there was this guacamole, fight, essentially, like, hey, who makes the best guacamole? And it was between the financial department and the print department. And there was a few photographers that came in really close. And it was interesting because we usually were so segregated. Every month they would do like 2 giant sheet cakes for month birthdays. So instead of everybody getting a separate birthday, because they had so many employees, like, oh, everybody gets a sheet cake, your name's written on one of the cakes. So, and at lunchtime you can come by and get a piece of cake. Most of the time though, unless we had those big parties, inter-department communication to just come by and say hi, it was completely frowned upon. Like, oh no, you shouldn't disturb the financial department. They've got numbers to crunch. They're trying to take care of stuff. Don't talk to the administrative department. They're busy. You don't need to talk to them because they're not on your team. You need to talk to your department manager, your team leader. So it was considered, it was very much like, oh, this is a waste of time because you're on the clock. You need to do your job. It was nice to do happy hours with just our team, and we would bring in the print department, the IT department, like, hey, we're going to go to the bar that's up the street. We're going to do their happy hour, do some appetizers, and just, hang out and get to know each other. And it wasn't even, I wouldn't necessarily consider that networking. I just call that socializing.
Yeah.
Like, hey, let's get to know this human being that I've been emailing that I can't get these passwords to work correctly. I need everything reset. Like, why is my computer blowing up and I'm standing behind them while they're on my computer, like just praying, like, are you going to fix it? Are you going to fix it? I've got a project to do, because we're so centric on what we have to get done by the end of the day, or we have this looming deadline. We don't really have the permission to go around and just be human. We're the cog in the machine. And I got really worn down by that. I would go out for pure networking. I'd find other creatives, because I also do, art and illustration. I'd meet up with my artist friends and we'd just sit around, drink wine and critique each other's work. Like, oh, it's so mentally refreshing to do it that way instead.
She's so eloquent. Sorry, I got completely lost in the eloquence of her statement. So we've had a couple of things pop up in chat, and I want to bring them up because I think they're interesting. So we've had Voltstrat, probably, because we were talking about how people hold things close to their chest. Do you feel that this not wanting to share knowledge is in general more of a problem in certain fields? For example, programmers are more prone than this than, say, artists. I'm actually going to say it really doesn't matter what field you're in. You're going to run across those who hold things tight to their chest, and you're going to run across those who don't.
Can I interject on that real quick?
Go right ahead.
However, programmers.
when I started freelancing as a solo, I kept everything close to the chest. When all these other new upcomers were just coming out of college, they were asking me, because I'd been out of school for a while, and they were asking me, and I was trying, like, oh, no, I don't want to share this information. And then I started really immersing myself in the community and feeling like I'm being selfish with the information and experience that I have. If people could avoid the hurdles I had to jump, what harm does it do to share that? Why not make someone else's life easier? And that makes me happy, knowing that my job makes other people's jobs easier. And then they appreciate that. And then they come back to you because you're a reliable well of information. And maybe one day they'll share something with you completely, unprompted. And you're like, oh, that's really neat. It's really, I had to grow out of it because I was very secretive. Like, I was very like, no, I'm not going to tell you my secrets. Go away, fresh out of
you might
college,
win business
young person.
that I would otherwise get. I was exactly the same. That's exactly what I was saying earlier on. I used to be, when I was younger, very insular, I suppose.
I'm wondering if this is just because of some of the things I've gone through in school. You are taught to hold everything close to your chest, because if you don't, then you can be seen as cheating. You can be seen as stealing someone else's work or copycatting, and it can be very, very bad. Plagiarism and all that other stuff is like, you can't even collaborate in some cases, because collaboration, unless it's the designated group project, can hurt your grade. In fact, it will come back at you. I mean, you're kind of trained that way in school.
And in the professional world, everybody's seen as your competitor. So if you share all that information, you're just making it easier for them to get all the work versus you.
Exactly. And interestingly enough, for me, I always had a problem with that. So while I was in university, we would be constantly getting work. I mean, that's just the way university is. You have to write lots of papers. And I had a blog that I kept just storing my information and my thoughts and things into about what I was learning, because I thought sharing is the way to go. I've always kind of had that open source sort of mentality, if you want to give it a term. And then I had people reaching out to me going, do you know people are stealing your work and using it as their own answers with teachers. And I was like, great.
It's going to
And I
happen.
had to shut it down. I had to shut down that. And it really hurt me because I felt like, one, if you're going to steal that blatantly and not try to change it or cite my sources, you're a dick. I'm sorry. But if you use the knowledge that I have put down to help expand your research and you just go, yeah, so I found on this website, this girl said this thing and it got me thinking about this. So I went and I did a little more research on this. By all means, do that. Use it to grow. Don't use it to replace your own thoughts. I want people to be empowered to think for themselves.
Well,
So
that's why licenses exist, isn't it, and software?
Yeah.
So you can control, at least on a legal level, what people can use the open source software that you provide for. And that doesn't mean they're not going to use it for illegitimate reasons, but it still means that you've got some comeback at some point if they read it or care.
At least you tried.
Yeah,
At least you tried.
You tried. El Gordino says he couldn't agree more. And I'm assuming this has to do with the fact that we're talking about the peer networking within a company. Because it's been a while since we've all been in a big company. We're all so used to sort of working for our own companies. But he says the healthiest teams go for a beer / whatever now and then. Even if it's once a year for 50 people get together, it needs that space for everyone to unwind and connect on a human level. Now, I know El Gordino has worked in some big companies before, so yeah, it makes sense.
And Volstrat said, in my company, which is around 60 employees, it's fairly common to walk into another office and have a chat, work-related or not, with other people. We're not sure how management views this, but I have a feeling without this informal and unofficial communication channel, the company would stop working. I agree. I'm a massive advocate of the agile process in software.
You'll have
companies.
To explain that to Sarah.
So the agile process essentially, it's less about process, even though a lot of process is involved in it, and it's more about the people, and it's more about communicating. It's about having small, succinct meetings. We have, in a Scrum stand-up, for example, we'd have a Scrum stand-up every morning. The entire team that's working on a piece of software will get up, stand up, 10 to 15 minutes, say there's 5 people, everyone gets a few seconds to say what they've done yesterday, what they're doing today, and if they're blocked by anything. Anything more complicated than that is taken offline, and then they talk about it between themselves. Everybody then knows roughly what state the project is in at the beginning of every morning. It's very, very quick, and it advocates people talking to each other. Everything we do, all of the documentation we put together, this thing's called user stories, where we focus on what the user does with the software. We use those to initiate conversation. They're sparse on purpose. They don't have that much information in them, but they give you just enough information to get the salient points and figure out what you need to do and who you need to talk to get the answers you need. And I'm a massive fan of that. I didn't used to be. I didn't really fully understand it, but now these days I totally get it and I'm on board.
You've jumped the bandwagon.
I have totally jumped the bandwagon. But the reason it's important is because it advocates that communication process, because it gets people to get up and go from, right, oh, hang on, right, I've got a sum, I need to do a really complicated sum for this particular procedure. Let's get up. I know Jeff in the finance department. I was speaking to him at the water cooler the other week. I'll go and ask him and see if he can help. And you go and chat to them, and he's like, well, no, that I don't know the answer to that. But if you go and speak to Suzanne over there, she knows that. That gets it going. And you're not taking much time out of people's day for that. You're taking seconds out of the day.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's got to be done right, okay? There is a bad way to do the informal networking throughout the day, and there's a good way to do it. The bad ones are if you see, and this is coming from someone who puts code in her face, if you see fingers flying across keyboard, code producing on screen, headphones on, send me a message and I'll get to it when I have a moment. Even if I have paused and I'm sitting there tapping my thumb to my chin as I am pausing for a moment because something is trolling in my brain, does not give you license to walk up and try and have a 45-minute conversation with me about the project you are currently working on. Because, oh my God, I will kill you if I lose my train of thought.
Right, so that is, you touched on a very important point there. In that instance, I am absolutely open. This is where programmers get a bad rep. I absolutely open to somebody coming and tapping on my shoulder and saying, "Oh, I need to talk to you about this, Chris." Okay, right, I'm just in the middle of this. Let me get to the end of this procedure and then I'll come and chat to you. That again is agile. That is we're speaking to each other, but we don't drop everything and immediately move on to this next thing because you never get anything done.
That's fine. It's the one who, when you say, "I'll be with you in a second," you go, "Yeah, but don't yeah, but me, sir."
Well,
don't yeah, but me.
That's not all their fault. You need to clearly communicate that back to them and say,
Okay,
right, is this going to take a while?
But
If
I
it
have
is,
also seen that they that they go, "Look, it's only going to take a moment. I do not care. Give me the time I need to finish this thought, and then I will get to you." And they still keep going. I'm just saying there's a good way and a bad way. The other bad way is if you're using it to subvert a process.
yes.
So, for example, "Hey, do you mind just changing the color for me real quick on that one little button you've got there?" No, log it.
Log a ticket and then we'll get onto it. That is the process. It has
Exactly.
to happen that way, and that isn't being obstinate. That is enabling productivity.
Yes. Without a doubt.
So,
there's nothing worse than trying to figure out what happened.
So before, well, we're running a little bit late, but there's one key point that I just want to touch on before we finish the show, which is how does somebody start networking?
There's a very easy way, in my opinion. Find something that interests you and look for groups that have something to do with that interest. It's that simple. So, for example, if you want to do business relation things, there are so many business networking things, just look up business networking groups.
They will all charge as well, though.
Oh, yes.
They will have some kind of fee ranging in the UK from £30 a month. You pay some kind of initiation fee and just stand and put a book on your head
and some people do it just so that they can put on their website this little badge that means bugger all, if you want to get blunt. The other thing is you just pick a topic that interests you, and there's websites like Meetup.
Yeah.
That one is so big for so many different topics. It's insane. There's also local Reddit groups as well for a lot of different topics. There's so many things that you can find. It's just, if you're interested in cars, look for people who specialize in the type of car you're interested in. If you're interested in skydiving, look for people who either talk about skydiving or not. If you're interested in photography and skydiving, look for people who like to take their GoPros skydiving.
There is a group for everybody out there.
There is.
I'm a big advocate of groups.
Because I can guarantee you will find other people who want that group and they just didn't know it existed.
And even just going to stores of things that you're interested in, like I'm a runner, so I go to the running stores and they have a community board, like, oh, there's all these breweries. I mean, I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. We have a brewery like every 5 feet around here. And depending on what time of the year or time of the week, there's always like, hey, we have this meetup for people that are amateur poetry writers, or we have amateur comedians, or we have, battle of the bands. And even just like going to a Starbucks, we all have community boards there. There's always an event going on, like, oh, there's improv here. There's, for the running stores, there's these groups like, oh, we'll meet at this brewery. We're going to run a couple of miles. It's every week. And then we end at the brewery and we have a beer, we sit and we just hang out. And it doesn't even have to be something that's related to your career. It could just be a hobby or something you might be interested in trying. Go to if you want to get into board games, go to a gaming store. They usually have like, open board game nights, or like, hey, it's a free comic book day. Like, go to the comic book store. I mean, that's just stuff that I'm aware of. Even like my favorite bars, there's always some kind of like, hey, here's trivia. That's a great way to meet people too, because you're having a good time. Exactly. And Meetup is really good too.
Pub quizzes are cutthroat here. I'm just going to warn you. They're different than quizzes in the United States.
We're pretty lax about it in America, but when the first thing anybody's...
You don't know what alcohol is. You don't know what real drunk people in pubs is about.
Well, we don't have pub quizzes in bourbon bars for a reason. We
right.
have them in breweries and just regular like bar places for bar quizzes and stuff, but it's never the hard liquor houses because we know better.
We don't.
Yeah, they get very competitive here. Even the team names get competitive here. It's a competition. It's a meta competition within.
That's the only competition we have are the team names. Whoever has the most raunchiest or the funniest or the most topical usually gets a bonus point from the game master. But after that, it's like it's not funny anymore because we're losing.
Okay, so we are getting close to the end of our show. We're actually pushing a little bit over time, and we do apologize. We hope you are willing to stick with us as we hit our RTFMs.
Oh yeah,
this
totally.
is our chance to actually rant about something that might be irritating us, just to get it off our chest. You know how we said, as a networking side of thing, it's a matter of sharing the positives and the negatives. I always, for me, feel that once I've said the RTFM in a show, I'm able to let it go and just, move on from it. So consider this group therapy. And it can be about anything. It can be about work. It could be about clients. Although we generally just say, if something's irritating you, just spit it out. So, do you have one, Chris?
I don't have anything specific. I'm just so tired at the moment. I'm so tired of battling this uphill battle. I am utterly drained by people trying to solve problems that have already been solved by another industry that I happen to be an expert in, and they've asked me they're paying me to come in and solve the problems, and they're not. And there's constant friction, and it's getting to the point now where I've nearly had enough, and I haven't been there for so many years because most of the work that I do, I thoroughly enjoy. This is a challenge. It's very challenging. It's got past the point where I feel like I'm giving the business a more benefit, and I'm just it's draining me. So I'm not ranting about anything specific. I'm just so tired. And if you're listening, anybody who I'm working with, please just lay off a little bit.
Do you have an RTFM, Sarah?
Oof. Nothing specific. I'm currently finishing up a project for a wayfinding program where in Northern Kentucky, we're putting all these bourbon barrels and all these artists are painting them. So they're going to be these fun little interactive pieces around the neighborhood because for those who don't know, Cincinnati was called Porkopolis because back in the 1800s, we made a ton of pork products. Like that's how we got the nickname. And our city animal is a flying pig. So we have these statues everywhere of flying pigs painted with like different scenes, or they're in front of different businesses, like, or in front of different theaters. So Northern Kentucky's like, well, we've got bourbon. We want our own thing. And so it's all bourbon barrels. And the last month and a half, I've been painting this stupid barrel, and being an artist, I'm never satisfied with my own work. It looks exactly like the prototype design. I laid out digitally. I sent to the client. They loved it. They approved it. I'm like, cool. And I start painting it like, this doesn't look right. Why doesn't it not look right? I hate this. I hate this. And I spent weeks painting this stupid thing. And the barrel is done. It's getting delivered on Saturday. And it's like, I look at it and it's like, oh, because I saw other people's barrels and it's like all that self-comparison, like, oh, they're so much better at this than I am. Why does mine suck so bad? I've been doing this for like 30 years. Oh, I hate myself. I suck. I'm going to crawl into a hole and never come out. That's the thing I've been dealing with for the last month.
It's imposter syndrome.
It is. And it never goes away, no matter how old you are. I've spoken to professionals, like artists that are in their 60s, and they still self-doubt all the time, self-deprecation, even though the work they produce, it's like, oh my God, can I just crack your head open and take away your talent because I could never get that good. But no, it's always there. It's just how you deal with it.
Yeah. It is. We will have an episode on imposter syndrome soon, by the way. We've had it brought up a couple of times. Yes. In my particular case, my RTFM is so surreal. I'm annoyed at food.
In general?
In general. And it's more the concept of the fact that, I get hungry. Everyone gets hungry. We all have to eat to survive. But of late, there has not been a single type of food that has really interested me
Oh,
at all.
wow.
Like, at all. I'd be like, usually mad props to Quincy Pooh, who is in chat, who is my husband. He'll be like, what are you craving? Because he knows how it works with me. It's usually I've got a particular craving. Let's satisfy it. And he's very open to all types of foods and things. And I'm usually like, ooh, I could go for some beef, or ooh, some type of chicken meal, or ooh, some kind of pasta. Of late, I think of food and I just nothing excites me about it at all. So my RTFM is simply the fact that food needs to get more exciting.
I'm with Suluco in chat. I'm too interested in food at the moment. I hate being controlled by it. I've come out of this. I said that a few years ago. I've said it a million times on the podcast, but I lost 7 stone, and
Yes.
3 years into having lost that, but I just want to eat everything all the time, and I want all of the bad stuff, and I sometimes I just can't control myself, and I eat an entire big box of hobnobs with chocolate on them, and just
Do you know what? We have biscuits in this house, and we get them very rarely. Chalky
they're
bickies,
the worst
as they
thing for
called.
you as well.
And
but they're so good.
we get them so rarely in this house, because what ends up happening is Dan will sit down and he'll go, I'll have a chalky biscuit. I'm like, okay. And then I'll turn and the thing is gone. It's empty. And he's like, I ate the whole thing.
Yep.
But it's so rare. So we don't buy them anymore, because to have them in the house is to tempt him.
It's exactly
for me,
why we don't.
For me, it's like I used to have this complete obsession with carrots. Like the sweetness, the crunch of them, the slight watery feel of, like, I love carrots. Absolutely love them, to the point where if that was the only thing I could ever eat for the rest of my life, I probably would. But now, just the thought of carrots, I'm just like, guess I'll eat because I have to, because I'm hungry. Like, nothing at all gets to me. So my RTFM is that.
There's a Volstrat has just said you have to treat yourself every once in a while. Yes, but a packet of biscuits every Tuesday is not a treat.
Well, that's not once in a while,
No.
though, Chris.
No.
That is a regularly scheduled binge.
Way too often. I go around a friend's house to play computer games on a Tuesday night, and he offers me a biscuit, much to his chagrin, because the entire thing's gone. I've actually started taking biscuits round to say sorry, and then eating the biscuits before he even puts them in his biscuit bottle. Last week, I took an entire thing of hobnobs plus bourbons plus custard creams. It's ridiculous. It's out of control, and I need to chill out. Right. Anyway, sorry.
I finished a pint of ice cream at 12:30 this morning because I wasn't tired. I'm like, I'm kind of hungry, and well, I didn't work out today, but it's Halo Top, so it's really low calorie and it's half empty. And then I wake up this morning like, I ate ice cream at midnight. I am a sad person.
Aw, okay.
Thankfully, it was the end of the pint, so I don't have any more temptation.
Yeah, that's how you get rid of temptation.
That's how I work it.
It's not here. I'm not buying anymore. It's gone.
On a Friday, we'll go out. We'll go out and we'll have cheat day on a Friday, and that's our regular thing. We'll go out for a meal, me and the wife, and then the entire weekend turns into cheat weekend, and I buy things at the supermarket and bring it home, and I'm like, I'll finish them before the end of the weekend, and then it'll be all right, won't it? And then the end of the weekend comes, and I've eaten everything, and I've God knows how many calories it is. Anyway, food. I love food.
Yes. So we are now at the end of our show. Thank you to absolutely everybody in Twitch chat. Chris, you were saying Volt's name correctly, so I'm going to let you do it again.
Volstrat.
Yes, and then El Gordino, Tultepe, Sulaco, and, absolutely everybody else who has been around chatting with us today. We hope for all of you listening in the future, and for those of you who are unaware and who are listening to us in the future, my husband just walked by and waved. So, yes, we hope you'll join us live in the future at twitch.tv/DNI stream. Finally, a special thank you to you, Sarah, for joining us. I do hope you've enjoyed yourself.
Oh, this was a blast. Thank you for having me.
And feel free to pimp yourself, your social channels, your company, pimp your side projects, whatever you want to do. Pimp.
The only social network that I'm on is really Instagram. It's at Fire Main Studio. So if you want to look at pictures of my dog or my runs that I go on or things that I drink or occasionally the artwork that I make, you can find it there. Or my more professional stuff is on Facebook at Firemain Studio.
Yes, sad face.
Got to be professional somewhere. My Instagram is kind of a free-for-all because I'm the business is me. My dog is the office manager. I have to put her up somewhere.
Thing is, this day and age, though, as soon as I change my Twitter account, that's why my Twitter is at 19 Ninjas, because that was my game studio. As soon as I changed it from my game studio as a persona to me and had my own photos on there and my own picture and my own name, people engage with me a lot more. It's about people these days. People want to know you, not your business and not what you're selling.
Your brand means nothing. It is the people with the brand that mean everything.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the reasons I get hired.
So our turn to pimp. Visit our website on www.dnistream.live for all links to our social media channels, Discord, dev chat, and podcast discovery platforms. You can also use our contact form to contact us for any reason for the show.
Yes. And we hope to see you all next week, 7 p.m. UK time, twitch.tv/DNIstream. And all that is left is for us to say goodbye.
Good night.
Goodbye.
Good luck.
Good night, Chris.